I didn't believe in haunted places, not really. But there's something about Cedar Ridge that sticks to you, like sap under your fingernails or that cold sweat you get before a fever breaks. It started with a letter. I was sorting through my late Uncle Howard's estate. He had no kids, no spouse, and lived most of his life alone in a crumbling Victorian house on the outskirts of Boontown, Vermont. He'd always been the black sheep of the family, eccentric, reclusive, obsessed with folklore and ancient religions. We called him the Professor, though I don't think he'd taught a class in 20 years. I wasn't expecting much from the inheritance. Maybe some antique books, weird trinkets, dusty taxidermy. But at the bottom of a drawer in his study, I found a sealed envelope addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakably his, neat, precise, with odd capitalizations. If you're reading this, I am likely dead by now. Do not mourn me. Instead, listen. There's a cabin buried deep within Cedar Ridge Forest. I have left you the coordinates. You must go there, not to stay, just to see. Just once, then seal it. Forever. There was a map, a hand-drawn set of directions over a topographical rendering of the woods. The cabin was marked with an X. Just below it, written in pencil, "Do not stay after dark." I should have laughed it off, chalked it up to his madness. But curiosity, mixed with grief and a touch of guilt, got the better of me. It was autumn, the leaves a blanket of orange and red, the days crisp and short. I figured I'd hike in, snap a photo, pay my respects to the old man's ghost, and leave. One day, two, tops. I packed light, flashlight, tent, notebook, trail mix, and a flask of whiskey. I drove to the last trailhead on the north side of the forest and parked. No one else was around. Even the park ranger station was shuttered for the season. The hike took longer than expected. The trail turned to brambles within an hour, and the terrain grew steeper, rockier. The trees leaned unnaturally inward, their branches forming an archway that blocked much of the fading light. When I found the cabin, it looked abandoned. Not ruined, abandoned. As though someone had left it in a hurry, but with the intention of coming back. The door was slightly ajar. A thin trail of smoke rose from the chimney, despite there being no one in sight. I stepped inside. It was warm, lived in. Dusty, but not decayed. A fire burned low in the hearth. A kettle hung over it, bubbling softly. The air smelled of cedar and something else. Something acrid, metallic. I called out. No answer. The interior was small. A bed, a bookshelf, a worn table with two chairs. On the wall, a series of photographs had been nailed in a perfect grid. All black and white. All of the same thing, the cabin. But in each photo, something was off. A branch moved. A window open in one frame, closed in the next. A shadow growing closer. In the last photo, something stood just outside the cabin, tall, antlered, and indistinct. I turned away, heart thudding. That's when I noticed the floor. There was a trapdoor. Uncle Howard had drawn it in pencil on the back of the map. A small square with a note. Do not open unless you are ready to see. The hollow listens. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that now. But I did. The smell hit me first. Damp, earthy rot, tinged with the sharpness of decay. I shone my flashlight into the hole. Stairs descended into darkness. Rough-hewn, twisting. I went down. Why, I couldn't tell you. The air felt charged, like the space between lightning and thunder. The walls narrowed. The wood gave way to stone. My footsteps echoed. After what felt like a mile, the tunnel opened into a chamber. A circle of stones stood in the center, surrounding a pit filled with black water. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of bones, feathers, and things I couldn't identify. At the far end, a table. On it, an open book, bound in something dark and cracked with age. The writing was in my uncle's hand. The entries started decades ago. The hollow is a memory, a sentience. It feeds on attention. The more you see it, the more it sees you. The cabin is the anchor. I thought I could watch it, record it, contain it. I was wrong. Each entry grew more erratic. It walks above me now, sometimes in the guise of mother, sometimes in my own skin. It shows me things I never lived, screams and voices I know. It wants out. The last entry was just a line. If you're reading this, it knows your name. I stumbled back. That's when I heard it. Footsteps above me. Then a voice. Soft. Like leaves rustling. Come back up. It was my voice. I ran. Up the stairs, past the trapdoor, and out the front door. But it was night. The sun had set while I was below. The forest was black and endless. No moon, no stars. I turned to look at the cabin, and the door slammed shut. The smoke stopped. The lights died. And in the window, I saw it. Me. Staring back, smiling. I ran and branches tore at my clothes. Roots clawed my ankles. The trees were too close. They whispered as I passed. I didn't look back. I found the trail. I found my car. I drove for hours without stopping. That was 2 years ago. But the hollow followed me. It's subtle. A figure in a photo that wasn't there before. A knock on the window when no one is outside. Sometimes my reflection lingers a second too long. I tried to burn the map. It wouldn't catch. I tried to warn others, but no one believes me. Until they see it too. Until they dream of the cabin. Until they feel that hum in the earth beneath their feet. The hollow is awake now. It remembers us. And it wants out. If you find the cabin, if you ever find it, do not open the trapdoor. Seal it, salt it, burn it. And for God's sake, don't stay after dark. I never believed in ghost stories, but I should have listened to my grandfather. When I was a kid, he used to tell me tales about a man with a lantern who wandered the woods behind his cabin. He said the lantern man wasn't a ghost exactly, more like something that had once been human and got lost somewhere between the world of the living and the dead. Grandpa always said, if you see his light, don't follow it, and never look him in the eye. I used to laugh, thought it was just one of those stories old folks tell to keep you close to the porch after dark. But last fall, I found out the truth. It started when I inherited the cabin. After Grandpa passed, the cabin sat empty for a year. No one in the family wanted it. It was too far out, too old, too strange. I volunteered to fix it up, maybe sell it. I figured a weekend of clearing brush and patching up the roof would be easy enough. A little quiet in the woods sounded nice. The cabin was just how I remembered. Small, creaky, and nestled deep in the forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. The air was thick with pine and wet leaves. It felt untouched, almost suspended in time. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and was immediately hit with a wave of nostalgia and a strange smell I couldn't quite place. Sweet, almost like something rotting beneath flowers. I chalked it up to mildew. That first night, I built a fire, cooked some beans on the old wood stove, and opened a beer. I was tired and full and warm when I first heard the click. It was soft, barely there, like someone flipping a lighter. Then I saw it, a flicker of light through the trees outside. Yellow, steady, a lantern. I froze. My brain didn't jump to ghosts. I thought it was a hiker, or maybe a hunter. But no one should have been out there, especially not that far off the trail, especially not at night. The light swayed gently, coming closer. I turned off my lantern and watched through the cracked window. Whoever was holding it moved slowly, deliberately. No stumbling, no flashlight bounce, just a steady gliding pace. Then, just as it reached the tree line, it stopped, right outside the cabin. My heart was hammering in my chest. I couldn't see the person, just the light, hovering about 6 feet off the ground. It didn't move for what felt like forever. Then it blinked out. Gone, no sound, no footsteps, just gone. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning I checked the woods. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there. But on the porch, just beside the door, I found something strange, a coin. Old, smooth, and blackened by time. Not American. It had strange lettering around the edge, and a symbol on one side. A single open eye. I brought it inside thinking it might be something Grandpa had dropped. Put it on the windowsill and tried to forget about the light. That was a mistake. The second night, it came back. This time, I was ready, or thought I was. I kept the lights off and waited. Around midnight, the click came again. Then the glow. Closer this time. It weaved through the trees like it knew where I was. And this time, it knocked. 3 slow knocks on the door. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. Then it spoke. Not loudly, like it was whispering through wood. "You have something of mine." I didn't answer, didn't dare. Another knock. "The coin, bring it to the hollow." The hollow. I remembered that place. Grandpa used to tell me never to go there. A low bowl in the forest, where nothing grew, not even moss. He said it was where the lantern man slept. I stayed frozen on the couch until dawn. When the light broke through the trees, I finally moved. I grabbed the coin and hurled it into the woods as far as I could. It didn't help. The third night was worse. I woke up to find the cabin door open. The coin was sitting on the kitchen table. And there were footprints. They weren't muddy or dusty, just wet, as if someone had stepped through shallow water. They led from the door to the table, and then to the couch where I had slept. I checked the locks. Nothing was broken. The windows were still latched, but someone or something had been inside. I packed my things. I was ready to leave. Screw the cabin, screw the repairs, screw everything. But when I got to the dirt road, my truck wouldn't start. The battery was drained, completely dead, like something had sucked the power from it. There's no signal out there, no neighbors, just trees and silence. I had 1 bar of signal when I stood on the old water tower near the back of the property. I climbed up, hands shaking, and managed to call a tow truck. But they said it would take until morning to reach me. I'd have to wait. One more night, I built the fire big, kept every light in the place on. I sat in the middle of the room with a hammer in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. I didn't care if I was drunk. I just didn't want to be afraid anymore. But fear doesn't care about resolve. Around 1 a.m., the lights all went out, one by one. Then I heard the door creak. I didn't look, I couldn't, but I felt it. The presence, cold and sharp, like needles in my skin. And then the voice, again, closer this time, clearer. "You took it, you woke me." I turned, and I saw him. He was tall, bone-thin, dressed in blackened rags that looked centuries old. His skin was pale, stretched tight over his skull. And in his hand he held the lantern, flickering with a flame that was blue, not yellow. But the worst part? He had no eyes, just empty sockets, bleeding shadow. And still, he looked at me. He stepped forward. I stepped back. I held up the coin. "Take it!" I shouted. "Take it and leave me alone!" But he didn't move. Not until I dropped the coin on the floor. The moment it hit the ground, he vanished. Not slowly, not with a fade or a whisper. Just gone. The next morning, my truck started like nothing had happened. The forest felt lighter. Still, I didn't look back when I drove away. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, grief, isolation. Maybe I hallucinated it all. But then a few weeks ago, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a single object. The coin, same open eye, same strange lettering. And a note, written in jagged handwriting. "You saw him. Now you carry the light." I used to crave silence. After 15 years working in emergency dispatch, with sirens in my ears and panic in every call, I longed for quiet like some people long for religion. That's what led me to the cabin in the Adirondacks. It belonged to my cousin Danny. He used to use it for hunting trips until he vanished last year. No one ever found him. I needed to get away. Badly. So when my therapist suggested a full week off-grid, no phone, no people, no noise, I remembered Danny's cabin. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just packed a duffel and drove north until the road stopped looking familiar. By the time I got there, dusk was falling. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it from when we were kids. One room, wood stove, oil lamps, a tiny cot, and beyond the porch, woods so thick the trees seemed to lean in. I told myself the silence would be good for me. I was wrong. Day one, I slept like a corpse the first night. No sirens, no buzzing phones, just the soft creak of old timber and the wind through pine needles. When I woke, I found something strange. My boots were wet, soggy, like like I'd walked through morning dew, but I hadn't gone outside. I chalked it up to a draft. The floorboards were warped. Maybe something had leaked in. Later that afternoon, while chopping firewood, I noticed a pit behind the cabin. It wasn't very wide, maybe 4 feet across, and perfectly round. No leaves inside, no debris, just packed, black soil. I didn't remember it being there as a kid. It gave me a weird feeling, like vertigo. I couldn't tell how deep it went. When I dropped in a rock, I never heard it land. Day 2. I dreamed of water. Rising black water pressing against a wooden ceiling and something just beneath the surface, watching, reaching. I woke up gasping. The cabin was freezing. The fire had gone out hours earlier, but the air felt wet, like a swamp. That day, I walked the perimeter of the cabin, trying to shake the unease. Every time I passed the pit, I felt something, a pull, like the kind you feel standing at the edge of a high place. I nearly leaned in, just to see, but something in my gut screamed no. Day 3. The pit was closer. Not a lot, maybe a few inches, but I was sure of it. The moss that used to be between it and the firewood pile was gone, and the ground around it looked disturbed, dug up, like something had crawled out. That night, I heard footsteps, heavy, slow, circling the cabin. I didn't move, just lay still in the cot, holding my breath, listening. Then, something tapped on the window. I sat up, heart racing, and the tapping stopped. There was no one there, only fog pressing against the glass. But the worst part? There were muddy footprints inside the cabin. Just 2, leading from the door to the cot. To me. Day 4. I tried to leave. I packed my things at dawn and started hiking the trail I'd driven in on. But after a few hours, I realized something was wrong. The landmarks were out of order. A tree that had been on my left going in was now somehow on my right. I circled back. The forest felt wrong, like it was watching me. When I returned to the cabin, the pit was right next to the porch. There was something new inside it, a rope ladder leading down. That night I heard my cousin Danny. He was calling my name. "Come down," he said. "It's not bad, just cold. Come see." I blocked the door with the cot. Day 5. I'm not proud of what I did, but I started drinking. There was a bottle of whiskey in the cupboard Danny must have left behind. I drank until the whispers stopped, until the shadows crawling across the floor didn't look like hands reaching anymore. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of a voice in my ear, a whisper but clear, "You're already below." I jumped out of bed, and the door wasn't where it should have been. There was dirt where the windows used to be. Roots hanging from the ceiling. I screamed, tore open the door, and saw blackness. Not night, stone. I was underground, buried. Day 6. I woke up back in the cabin, on the cot, fire burning. Everything where it should have been. Except the pit. It wasn't outside anymore, it was in the middle of the cabin. Perfect circle, same ladder. I should have run, smashed everything and lit the place up. But I didn't. I stood at the edge. I looked down, and I saw Danny. He was standing at the bottom. Pale, wide-eyed, wet. "Please," he said, "don't leave me down here." His voice was wrong. Hollow, like it had to echo off dead things to reach me. I shut the trapdoor. I nailed it shut with boards and split wood and anything I could find. Day 7. I didn't sleep. I sat by the fire, shotgun in hand, waiting for morning. But the light never came. Not at dawn. Not at noon. The sky stayed dim. Gray. Timeless. Time doesn't move the same way here anymore. The whispers are constant now. They call from the pit, the walls, the fire. Sometimes they sound like Danny, sometimes they sound like me. I don't know if I ever left. I don't know if I ever got here. Maybe the silence I craved brought me somewhere I can't come back from. If you find this, if you find the cabin, don't go inside. If you hear someone calling your name from below, don't answer. Whatever's in that pit isn't human anymore. And it's hungry for company. Jason had never been the outdoorsy type. But when his friend Mia invited him and 2 others, Leo and Sarah, on a weekend hiking trip, he figured he'd give it a try. They'd all grown distant since college, and Mia thought the retreat would help them reconnect. The hike took them deep into the northern woods of Oregon, where cell reception was as dead as the underbrush they crunched through. By evening, the group found a clearing and set up camp. That's when they saw it. A cabin old and leaning slightly, half swallowed by trees and moss. It wasn't on any of their maps. "Let's check it out," Leo said, already halfway there. The others followed reluctantly. The door creaked open with a groan. Not without it. You said, tell it from the perspective of someone who experienced it. First-person POV. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's a first-person 10-minute horror story told as if someone lived through it. The tone is personal, reflective, and meant to gradually ratchet up the dread. The cabin that remembers. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe to warn someone, maybe to convince myself it really happened. But I need to get it out. We weren't supposed to stay in the cabin. That's important. We were supposed to camp near Lake Marrow. Just me, Leo, Mia, and Sarah. It was our first reunion in years. A chance to catch up, unplug, pretend adulthood hadn't scattered us in 4 directions. But then the rain started. It came down in sheets that first night, sudden and violent. Our tents buckled. Water got into everything. Sleeping bags, food, even our phones. That's when we found the cabin, or when it found us. We didn't see it at first. Just a faint light flickering through the trees. Leo thought it was another camper, maybe someone with a generator or a lantern. We pushed through the underbrush and found it. An old one-room structure, half swallowed by moss and trees. It shouldn't have had power, but a single bulb swung gently from the ceiling inside, casting a dull yellow glow. I still remember the way the door creaked open, like it had been waiting for us. Inside, everything was preserved. Dusty, but not decayed. There were 4 narrow beds with sheets tucked tight, a table set for 4, and a fireplace that sparked to life the moment Mia tossed in a match. That should have been a red flag, but we were wet, cold, and laughing at our luck. None of us thought to ask why there were 4 beds, or why everything was already prepared for us. That night, I dreamed of whispers, not voices, whispers, like leaves brushing my ears. But they were saying something, and in my dream, I understood. Stay. 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 When I woke up, I saw something written on the inside of the window, where the condensation had collected. 4 words, like they were traced with a fingertip. You're where you belong. I thought it was a prank. Sarah always liked creepy stuff, and I figured she was trying to freak me out. I laughed it off, wiped the glass, and went outside. But when I got to the woods, something was wrong. The trail was gone. I mean it. Gone. Just thick trees where there had been a path the day before. I tried to retrace our steps, but every direction looked the same. When I turned around to head back to the cabin, it was closer than it should have been, like it had moved. I didn't tell the others at first. I thought maybe I was tired, disoriented. We decided to try hiking out together the next morning. That night, the whispers returned, louder this time, not in a dream. Mia was the first to say it out loud. Do you guys hear that? We all froze, and then Sarah screamed. She was staring at the mirror over the fireplace, pale as a ghost. There's someone behind us, she whispered. We turned. Nothing, just shadows dancing in the firelight. But in the mirror, I swear to you, there were 5 people, not 4. The 5th was tall, hunched, with a face like damp paper, thin, sagging, half-rotted. It didn't move, just stood behind us, watching. Leo picked up the lamp and smashed the mirror. The whispers stopped. For a while. The next day, we packed up and tried to hike out again. We walked for hours. But every trail circled back to the same clearing, the same goddamn cabin. That night, the cabin was different. The beds had our names carved into the headboards. The table was set again, but this time, the plates held raw meat, still warm. And on the walls, pictures had appeared. Faded old photos that hadn't been there before. In each one, we were standing in front of the cabin. But the photos were old. Decades old. I had a mustache in one. Mia wore 70s bell-bottoms. Leo had graying hair. In every photo, we looked older, like we'd been there for years, like we'd always been. Sarah tried to run. She made it to the tree line before she vanished, just gone. No scream, no sound. We ran after her, screaming her name, but there was only silence. The woods swallowed her. We didn't speak that night. We just sat by the fire, afraid to sleep. Around midnight, I noticed the door had opened on its own. I saw a figure in the doorway. It was Sarah, but her skin was pale, wet, and her eyes were all black. She smiled and said, "The cabin remembers." Then she was gone. Leo lost it after that. Took the hatchet and tried to chop the place down, screaming that it was alive, that it was feeding off us. The walls bled. I saw them bleed. Dark, thick sap, or blood, or something worse. Mia was gone the next morning. Her bed was still made. I left Leo sleeping and tried to burn the cabin down. But the fire wouldn't catch. It just wouldn't. Like the wood was soaked from the inside, and the more I tried, the more I felt something behind me. Watching, waiting. That was 2 days ago, or a week, or a year. I don't know anymore. I'm alone now. Leo's bed is empty. His name is gone from the headboard. Only mine remains. Sometimes I hear footsteps on the roof. Sometimes I see shadows outside the windows that vanish when I look. But the worst part is the mirror. Yes, it's whole again. And tonight, there are 4 figures in it. One of them looks just like you. If you're reading this, please, don't come looking for the cabin. It remembers. And now, it remembers you too. People always say the woods are peaceful, quiet, healing. They've never been to Ashwood. I first heard about the cabin from my sister Elise. She booked it through some obscure rental site that didn't even have reviews. Just a few grainy photos and a description that promised total solitude. She needed a break after a messy breakup and wanted to go alone. She texted me a picture of herself by the cabin, smiling, thumbs up, with that crooked grin I hadn't seen since we were kids. That was the last time I heard from her. At first I thought she'd just gone off-grid. She liked that sort of thing. But days passed, then a week. Her phone went straight to voicemail. She never missed our weekly calls, not even when she was sick or pissed off at me. I filed a missing person report. The cops said they'd check it out, but I could tell they didn't care. Probably just needed space, they told me. People unplug all the time. So I went myself. The drive was long, miles of narrow roads and dense, suffocating trees. I almost missed the turnoff entirely. It wasn't marked, just a rusted chain across a dirt path and a small wooden sign that simply read, Ashwood. I stepped out of my car and everything felt wrong. You know that feeling when someone's staring at you? That prickle on the back of your neck? That's what it was like. Constant, heavy, but there was no one there. The cabin looked like the photo Elise sent. Small, simple, surrounded by thick pine trees. But the closer I got, the more it seemed off. The windows were too dark, like the glass absorbed light. The wood was warped in places, like it had been soaked and dried 100 times over. And there was no sound, no birds, no wind, just silence so thick it rang in my ears. Inside, it smelled like dirt and old wood. Dust coated everything except the table. There were 2 mugs on it. One was full of cold coffee. Elise's duffel bag sat near the couch, half unzipped. Her journal was on the armrest. I flipped through it. The first few pages were normal. Notes about hiking trails, the fresh air, how freeing it felt to be alone. Then, a change. There's someone in the trees. I see them at night, just standing, watching. I found footprints outside the cabin this morning. Barefoot. Huge. The mirror in the bedroom keeps fogging up even when it's cold. Like someone's breathing on it. The last entry was just one line. It won't let me leave. I froze. My skin crawled. I rushed outside to look for any signs of her. Nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, just endless forest in every direction. I should have left then. I tried to. But the road was gone. I mean that literally. The dirt path I drove in on was just forest. Solid, undisturbed forest, like the trees had grown back in second. I panicked. I ran in what I thought was the direction of the road, calling Elise's name. After a few minutes, I came back around, to the cabin. No matter which way I walked, I ended up right back where I started. Like the forest was folding around me, corralling me. I went back inside and tried the radio on the shelf. Just static. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard movement outside. Not footsteps, dragging. Like something heavy, wet, being pulled through the dirt. Once, I looked out the window. There were faces, dozens of them, half hidden behind trees, pale, sunken, eyes wide and empty, just watching. I blinked and they were gone. In the morning, the journal was open on the floor, a new page scribbled in frantic handwriting. It feeds on attention. Don't look too long. Don't think about it. It wants you to know it's there. Elise is gone. Something is wearing her skin. That's when I saw her, standing just inside the tree line. Same flannel shirt, same crooked smile, but her eyes didn't move. She didn't blink. I whispered her name. She cocked her head like a confused animal, then smiled wider, too wide. And then she whispered back, voice like splinters, "You came home." I slammed the door and barricaded it with a chair. It's been 3 days since then, or 3 weeks. Time feels strange here. Every night she gets closer, just a little. I can hear her breathing through the walls, scratching at the windows, whispering words I can't understand. The cabin won't let me go, neither will she. I think it's using her face, her voice. I don't know if Elise ever made it here at all. I found a trap door in the floor this morning. It was hidden under the rug. I haven't opened it yet, but the scratching is coming from underneath now. If anyone finds this, don't come to Ashwood. Don't follow the voice. Don't open the door when she knocks, because she will knock, and she will sound just like someone you love. I've never told anyone this. Not the police, not my friends, not even my therapist. It sounds insane, but I know what I saw, and more than that, I know what followed me home. It happened 2 years ago during one of the worst times in my life. I was deep into recovery, booze, pills, whatever numbed me. I was a mess. I had just relapsed for the 3rd time, lost my job, and my girlfriend had finally walked out for good. My sponsor, Tom, told me I needed to get away. Go clear your head, he said. Go somewhere quiet, somewhere with no temptations. Get clean, reset. He offered me the use of an old family cabin deep in upstate New York. Said it had belonged to his grandfather, hadn't been used in years, but it had running water, a wood stove, and enough food to get me through a couple weeks. No cell service, no distractions, he told me, just you and the trees. It sounded perfect. The drive out took nearly 6 hours. The last half hour was all dirt road, no signage. I only found the place because Tom told me to count 13 steps up the hill after parking by a crooked pine. And sure enough, just as he'd said, I found a narrow trail. And after a short walk, there it was. A one-room cabin, old but intact, squatting like a dark animal among the trees. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful, not serene, silent, no birds, no wind. Just an oppressive stillness that made the air feel heavier. Inside, the cabin was simple. Bed, stove, woodpile, pantry, one grimy window, and a steep staircase leading down to a basement. I peeked but didn't go down. I could smell dampness and rust, and something else I couldn't place. Something sour. I told myself it was mold. Just mold. The first few days were fine. I chopped wood, journaled, even meditated. The shakes hit me on day 2, the sweats and hallucinations by day 3, but I knew what to expect. I told myself it would pass. I just had to ride it out. That's when the dreams started. The first one was simple. I was standing at the top of the hill, looking down at the cabin. But something was walking around it, circling. Something tall, pale, with 2 long limbs and no face. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Just watched as it made its way to the front door and started to knock. 3 soft knocks. Then I'd wake up. The second dream was worse. Same cabin, same hill, but this time I was inside, hiding under the bed, and I heard the door creak open. Heavy footsteps crossed the room. Then a voice. Not human, not even animal, just wrong. Like wood splitting and wind howling at once. It whispered, "Come down the steps." I woke up with a mouthful of dirt. I was outside, lying next to the basement door. That was when I realized I'd been sleepwalking. At least, that's what I told myself. I started locking the door and piling wood in front of it before bed, but it didn't help. Each night the dreams got more vivid, more real, and every morning I'd wake up closer to that damn basement. One morning the door was open. Not just unlocked, open, hanging on its rusty hinges, and carved into the inside were words I hadn't noticed before. The 13th step is down. I didn't understand it. 13 steps had brought me up to the cabin. What did it mean that the 13th step was down? I tried calling Tom from the ridge. Still no signal. Tried hiking back to my car, but I got turned around. The woods didn't look the same anymore. Paths that were there before were gone. I swear the trees moved. I'd blink and they'd be closer. That night, the knocking started for real. 3 knocks. Software precise. Just like the dream. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Just lay in bed, heart hammering, waiting. Then, a voice came through the door. Same as before. Cracked wood, wind, and rot. You've come this far. Just one more step. I pressed my hands over my ears and cried. I don't remember falling asleep. The next morning, I saw footprints outside. Barefoot. Long, deep. They led from the woods to the basement door and stopped. The door was closed again. Locked from the inside. I thought about leaving. About running through the woods until I hit a road or died trying. But something in me, curiosity, madness, addiction, I don't know, drove me to the edge. I had to know what was down there. That night, I brought a flashlight. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, one hand on the wall, counting each step as I descended. 1, 2, 3. The air grew colder. 4, 5, 6. The smell hit me then. Rotted meat, wet leaves, burnt hair. 7, 8, 9. My flashlight flickered. I kept going. 10, 11, 12. There was no 13th step, just dirt. I shined my light across the basement and saw the floor was uneven, sunken in the center, like something had clawed its way up from below. And in the middle of that pit was Elise, or something wearing her face. She looked up at me, hair hanging in strings across her face. Her mouth was too wide. Her eyes were all wrong, too dark, too deep, like there was nothing behind them. She spoke in that same splintered voice. The 13th step is surrender. Then she smiled, and I saw her teeth weren't teeth. They were nails, rusted, bent, all jammed into black gums. I ran. God, I ran. I don't remember getting out. Just remember collapsing in the woods, waking up by my car the next morning with bloody feet and dirt under my fingernails. I drove until I hit signal, called Tom, and told him everything. He didn't say a word. When I finished, he just hung up. I called back. Voicemail. That night I checked the rental site. The cabin listing was gone. The site itself didn't even exist anymore. I haven't heard from Tom since. Sometimes, late at night, I hear knocking. Just 3 soft taps on the window or the door or the wall behind my bed. I don't answer. I don't speak, because I know now what the 13th step really is. It isn't surrendering to healing, it's surrendering to.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man suffering from an impairment decides to seek out a cure when things go horribly wrong. So, what's something that bothers you? Because mine is dry eyes.
A few months ago, I was at a bachelor party. All my friends had gathered, and we had this big night out. I'll be the first to admit I had a few shots too many. Still, I'm a responsible driver, and I didn't live all that far away. So I took a sobering walk back home. I used a shortcut by the lake, trying my best not to step on any frogs on the way. Those bastards are everywhere. I was about halfway home when I noticed something further down the road. Someone was coming my way, and they were dragging a large garbage bag behind them. We stopped about 20 feet from another, and I got a good look at him. He was wearing nothing but a pair of jeans, and he had this wild stare, like an animal. His eyes were so large they were practically round. He had several deep cuts in his skin as if sliced by a knife, but there was no blood coming out. He just stood there, staring at me. "Look the other way," he said. "Just look away." I don't know why I did as he asked. Maybe it was just me being stupid and drunk. Still, it feels like there was something more to it. I honestly didn't want to know what I was walking into. So I looked away and heard him shuffle past me with his garbage bag in tow. "Good," he coughed. "You did good." I didn't report it to the police. I was barely conscious by the time I got home, and I wasn't sure if I had dreamt it all. I was too busy nursing my hangover to consider what had really happened. It wasn't until a few days later, when I started noticing the missing posters for Councilwoman Leslie Boland, that I started getting suspicious. Still, I did nothing. I had no part in this. I wasn't even sure what I'd seen. About a week later, they reported Leslie Boland had been found. There weren't any details released to the public, except that there was suspicion of murder. I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I'd seen something that night. I hadn't told anyone, not even my girlfriend. I laid awake at night thinking about what to do. Then one morning, there was a mark on my door, a large X made with charcoal. I washed it off immediately, but the thing spooked me. I'm a very private person, and there was no way I could take this in any other way than as a threat. If it was supposed to intimidate me, they failed. Instead, I told my girlfriend about it, all of it. The man I'd seen, my suspicions, everything. She didn't seem too bothered. Maybe she thought I made it up to scare her, not that I have a history of doing so. Then again, it has been hard getting her to focus on anything but the garden lately. But that's not here nor there. So, I went to the police. I explained what I'd seen, where I'd seen it, and when. I tried to describe the man, the garbage bag, and his general expression. They didn't seem all too interested. I'd been blackout drunk. It had been over a week ago, and they'd already arranged a search in that area a few days prior. I wasn't a reliable witness. Even if they believed me, they couldn't send out a dive team to Frog Lake on nothing but this testimony. They needed something more. I just washed my hands off the entire thing. I was done. I'd tried to help, but no one seemed to take it seriously. For a while, I thought I was just being paranoid. Then I started getting dry eyes. I know, it doesn't sound very interesting. We all get them from time to time, but I'd never had that before. The skin was red and irritated, and at times I could barely keep them open. I tried creams and salves, but it was all just temporary pain relief. The problem persisted for days, and it started to affect my personal life. I no longer felt comfortable driving, and seeing myself in the bathroom mirror was just uncomfortable. But there were other things. I noticed the charcoal X marker around town. On the side of the water tower, in alleyways, on the sign to the quarry, next to the church mailbox. They were small, but all over. How hadn't I seen these before? Looking back at it, I'm pretty sure these spots were marked before. I started patrolling my house, looking for these marks. I didn't see any nearby, but I did see one by the neighbor's house. One of those fabricated houses from the 70s. Right there on a tree with a swing, clear as day, another charcoal X. I lived like that for a while, and I adapted as best as I could. I set up a doctor's appointment, but nothing came of it. More creams and salves. As I was grocery shopping at the supermarket, I had some sort of seizure. It wasn't for long, but it was the most intense thing I'd ever felt. Like a light show under my eyelids. I'd see these shades of orange and red with sharp tangs of white. It would show up out of nowhere, and my eyes forced themselves shut. The swelling made it hard to open them. One of the cashiers rushed over to help. I washed my face, forced my eyes open, and the lights were gone, but not entirely. Over the next few days, I could sense those colors whenever I closed my eyes. I'd see them swirling and twisting, forming and dissolving into shapes seemingly at random. It was like watching clouds on the inside of your head. I could barely get any sleep. It was ever present. A second doctor's appointment later, and I was told most of my symptoms matched that of a powerful migraine. Now, next to my creams and salves, I got some migraine medication. It didn't take me long to realize they didn't really do anything. I started taking the bus to and from work. Sure, I could have someone drive me, but I didn't want to be a bother. At first, it was hell. Forcing my eyes open made them go drier even faster, but closing them gave me the swirling shapes of red, orange, and white. There was no rest, no getting away. You can't run from your own body. One time, as the bus came to a stop by a red light, I closed my eyes. Then, in the middle of those swirling colors, was a large X-shaped void. Darkness. It was set in a specific spot. Whenever I turned my head, it'd go away. I managed to pinpoint the spot in real life when I looked in a certain direction. When I opened my eyes, I saw him. The same man who dragged that garbage bag that night. He was crossing the road by the red light. I'd never noticed him if it wasn't for the X I saw as I closed my eyes. The X followed him. It marked him. For a moment, our eyes met, and I think he saw something in me too. He smiled. Later that day, as I was waiting for the bus back home, I noticed someone sitting down on the bench next to me. Even with my eyes closed, I could figure out who it was. X marks the spot. I looked up and got a better view of him. Mid-30s, early 40s, tall, skinny, muscular, short black hair, goatee, and the most intimidating eyes I'd ever seen. They were these pale white orbs with just a spot of black. He held a pair of sunglasses in his hands, even though the sun had already set. Who wears sunglasses in the dark? Rough day, he asked? Yeah, I nodded. It'll get better, he comforted. It always does. I didn't answer. There was something odd about his voice, like he was talking to someone he knew rather than a complete stranger. Just look ahead, he said. Look closely. He got up from the bench and started walking. I waved at him. Aren't you taking the bus? I prefer a long walk. Step by step, he disappeared down the street. That night, as I sat in my bedroom, I closed my eyes. I shut them as hard as I could, frustrated by the colors and the discomfort. And for a brief second, I noticed something in front of me. Just this tiny black spot. It was just like in the bus, a dark void, bereft of color. I didn't realize I was looking straight ahead at a reflection in the bedroom mirror. Again, I closed my eyes and stepped forward. The spot grew larger and came into focus. There, in the equivalent of where my forehead was reflected, was a black X. I was marked. I started having horrible nightmares. The colors in the back of my eyes started shaping into violent images. The red and orange turned into blood, skin, and innards. The tangs of sharp white turned into bone. Closing my eyes was like looking up from under a pile of broken bodies. It was disorienting and it made me sick. The migraine pills did nothing. I found myself sleeping with my eyes open. In the morning, my eyes were so badly crusted, I couldn't see without thoroughly washing them. Still, the creams and salves did nothing. My girlfriend was getting worried. Not only because of my eyes, but because she said something had changed with me. I wasn't listening or paying any attention. I was constantly distracted and I wasn't talking as much. I didn't even notice it myself, but she was right. Usually that'd bother me greatly. I consider myself an active listener, but lately I just didn't care. Maybe I'd changed more than I realized. Things were getting worse. Every time I closed my eyes, a new horror would morph into view. Hellish landscapes, laughing skulls, a sky full of eyes. All in shades of orange, red, and yellow. A nightmare with every blink of an eye. I tried to force myself just not to blink, but the swelling made it impossible. Sometimes the visions would be so bad, I audibly gasped or screamed. I was sent home from work, sickly. At best, I was a distraction. At worst, I was scaring the other workers. I locked myself in the bathroom that night and turned off the lights. It was easier to keep my eyes open in the dark. There, as I blinked, I noticed the reflected X in the mirror was larger. My mark was larger. I stepped up close, thinking about what the man from the bus stop had said. "Look closer," I muttered. I pressed my face against the bathroom mirror. The X covered my entire field of view, and finally, closing my eyes, just gave me darkness, no colors. It was all just darkness. The relief was so enormous that I cried. Then, a hand, something reaching out of the mirror, stroking my hair. A rumbling voice, as whispered from underwater. "Hello?" I started closing my eyes more. I started making sense of things. In the landscapes and horrors, I noticed patterns corresponding to my surroundings. What looked like a skull could be my bed, morphing as I moved back and forth. And Norma's dismembered tongue could be where my hallway carpet was. It was like seeing the world shaped through a constant morphing, etch-a-sketch from hell. Like staring at a moving painting, colors never settle. I found myself walking around for hours, eyes closed. I could navigate my space better and better. All I had to do was look closer. I could even type on my phone and keyboard. I could cook, I could take walks, and step by step, hour by hour, the horrors that had first shocked me started to seem normal. This was just the way the world looked now. I can't say my girlfriend was pleased. She was so bothered by all of this. We had a huge fight, and I couldn't care less about her emotions. It all just seemed so superficial. How can you honestly say, "What about me?" to someone who might be losing their eyesight? That, if anything, is short-sighted. When she demanded a break, I didn't fight back. I normalized my world with a hellish vision. It was all just a different way of seeing things. I tried watching the world with my eyes open, but they were just too dry. I couldn't be bothered. It all seemed so bland in comparison. If I'm really honest, I missed seeing the orange and red when I opened my eyes, so I've kept them closed. It wasn't too long ago when I noticed several dark spots outside my house. At least 12. Moving with my eyes closed, I stepped out, surrounded by landscapes of orange and red. I opened the front door. There was at least 12 X's, tall and dark. I'm not a small person, but these were all taller than me. Looking up, I noticed at least 4 or 5 of them circling overhead. Not flying or flapping any wings, just hanging there, suspended. Symbols. "You're looking closer," said a familiar voice with a cough. "You did good." "Please tell me what's happening." "I told everyone about you," the voice continued. "They were eager to reward you." "This is a reward? Can't grow new muscles without some tension and pain." The voice chuckled. "All this discomfort will pass. Then what? Then we can move forward and see things together." Enough of this. I was annoyed. I hated this unclear, puzzling crap. I wanted answers, and I wanted them now. I stepped up to the X in front of me and forced my eyes open with my fingers, only to realize they were already open. Orange sands, blood-red skies, bone-white mountains, rivers of fire. In front of me, nothing but a dark X suspended in midair. I tried to blink it away, closing and opening my eyes, but nothing helped. This was real. This was happening. My mind snapped as I fell to the ground. "You won't regret it," the voice said. "I promise." I crawled backwards. I could feel the gravel of my driveway under my fingers, and within seconds I could feel my front door behind me. I couldn't take my eyes off the floating figures. "Don't leave," it said. "Please don't leave." I looked to the sides, corpses floating down a river of fire, worm-shaped tunnels boring into the side of rib-caged mountainsides, countless X-shaped spots, all waiting for me to speak. They were floating overhead, drifting underneath. I could feel them, far off, closing in. "No," I stammered. I can't. Please," it pleaded. "Please." I crawled backwards. I felt the front door open behind me. Then I was back. I kept my eyes open. With every blink, I was back in that hellscape. But now, I heard them. They were screaming at me, coming for me. With every blink of an eye, I could feel them closing in. I was being torn between 2 places at once, and that other place, they didn't want to leave any witnesses behind. I was seconds away from being picked apart, tossed down the river of flame. My dry eyes screamed at me to blink, to close my eyes, to surrender. I counted the seconds. I stumbled into my home office, feeling them closing in. I found my solution in one of the drawers. I stapled my eyelids open. Since then, I haven't blinked. I sleep with my eyes open. I know what waits for me, just a few blinks away. I can't live like this for long. I can protect my eyes with goggles, and I go through at least a bottle of eye drops a day. I've cleaned my wounds to make sure they don't get infected, and now they've healed up. I couldn't close my eyes if I wanted to. I don't know who these people were or what they want from me. I don't know if it is too late to accept their offer or what that'd entail. I guess they want to tell me as little as possible, to test my faith. I don't know. Sometimes I lean against the mirror, hoping that hand will comfort me again. I'm so tired of my dry eyes.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man working for a preservation zone learns that the cubs he's watching might be in more danger than just poachers. So, what have you ate? Because I know of that which eats lions.
There are 3 times as many lions in captivity as there are in the wild. That's an uncomfortable fact, but it also leaves the question, where the hell are all these lions? Sure, there are zoos, there are animal sanctuaries, there are even private breeders, similar to those of Netflix fame. Then there are preservation zones. Not many people know of these. There are less than a dozen in the US, and most of them are used for various kinds of endangered species. There's one in Florida that is exclusively for tigers. A small one in Oklahoma used for elephants. Then there is one in Arkansas, the Wren and Collin Panther Zone, the RCPZ. They keep lions. That's where I work. It is time we spoke about it. A lot of people haven't heard about this, and I think that is by design. The area is a lot larger than it needs to be, and most of it is wetland. When I started, there were in total about 30 lions separated into 3 prides. The lions were confined to 3 indoor shelters and a large caged outdoor space. There were veterinarians on site at every hour of the day, and a total of 45 employees on rotation. I was a part of the handlers, the group of employees with the highest overturn and the least insight. This is where it gets weird. The RCPZ has literal acres of wetlands that is seemingly unused. It just sits there. The shelter and caged area takes up less than 1/7 of the total space. Lions aren't meant to wander around in swamps anyway, so why even have this area set up? I didn't question it too much at first. I started working there in 2016. I was part of a team of 4 handlers, working with the second pride. 2 grown males, 5 females, 6 cubs. The largest group of lions we had. I came straight out of high school, working my way up to a Ford veterinary school. I've always loved the big cats, and I heard about the RCPZ completely by accident. The area has literally no online presence, and they never put out ads when they look for new people. To this day, I still have no idea if they are privately owned or not. I think it might be government though, but I don't know. I found the RCPZ when driving through the wetlands with my buddy. We were running out of gas and desperately looking for a gas station, when we found a wall along a stretch of forest. Along the wall, every 30 yards or so, was a small metal plate describing it as the Wren and Collin Panther Zone. I was curious and came back the next day. I followed the wall as far as I could and happened upon the main building. I was looking for a job, and there it was. The rest is history. My interviewer told me that the RCPZ was off the grid for a reason. Apparently, back in the 80s, there were serious cutbacks. Since then, there's been a policy to keep non-essential costs to a minimum. So, both electronics and digital equipment is more or less unheard of. The entire shelter is supposed to be able to run for at least a month, independently of the outside world, with no power or internet connection. I started working after 2 weeks of training. I mostly prepared meals and helped the vets monitor the cats with more serious health conditions. One of the males was getting old, the king of the pride. In all files and folders, he was referred to as T01, so we called him Toy. Sweetest old cat you can imagine, not a violent bone in his body. He would actually purr when he saw the handlers. It sounded like someone trying to start a lawnmower. As he got older, the vets informed us that there was nothing more we could do. It would be a matter of weeks before he simply couldn't walk anymore. His quality of life would drop, and he'd be in constant pain. They suggested that he be put down. This completely changed the atmosphere among the staff. I was not supposed to be part of the handlers who took Toy to his final resting place, but We had a staff shortage that day. My supervisor, Danielle, was in tears. She described to me that this was the hardest part of the job, but that we all had to take solace in the fact that Toy had lived a long and carefree life. The other handlers had to coax her out of the bathroom. She locked herself in there and cried until lunch. When it was time, we barely had to do anything. Toy was so happy to see us, he willingly came along. Except we weren't going back to the vets. We walked out the back of the chain-link fence towards the wetlands. Looking at the other handlers, I knew better than to ask questions. They'd gone quiet. Toy could sense that something was wrong, and he tried his best to comfort us. He'd poke us with the tip of his nose, as if to ask us what was going on. We walked for at least 35 minutes, following old trails deeper into the wetlands. We had to stop at times to make sure Toy could keep up. He was losing parts of his mane by now, and he was clearly in pain. Sweet old man. Finally, we came to this big lake. I noticed there were several logs and trees around there with odd marks, as if hit by lightning or clawed by an animal. Danielle took Toy aside and asked the rest of us to start walking back. I wanted to say that we couldn't just leave her there with the lion, but no one else protested. I just looked at the others, who shook their heads. This wasn't a good time for questions. We did as we were told and walked away. Toy watched us curiously, but stayed with Danielle. As we left them behind, I looked at the other two handlers. Before I could even find the words, they interrupted me. "Don't look," one of them said. "Just accept it." A few minutes later, the ground started rumbling. The handlers said it was swamp gas, but I wasn't convinced. Swamp gas doesn't roar. It doesn't make the ground move. Also, it doesn't suddenly just stop, does it? That day changed the way I looked at my job. I started asking a few too many questions and reading a few too many documents. For example, there were at least 6 different academic papers on the Panthera atrox going around the facility. The North American lion, they went extinct thousands of years ago. The funny thing about it is that I can't find any of those papers online or their authors. I'm pretty sure most of them were written on site by the veterinarians. There were, of course, lots of areas I wasn't allowed in. Doors with reinforced locks and armed guards. Our ID badges were color-coded to show which corridors we were allowed to go through. And stepping out of bounds was grounds for immediate termination. The armed guards were not friendly. If anything, they could be a bit overzealous. Handlers and veterinarians were to be considered untrustworthy. So the default attitude of the guards was to doubt us and double-check our intentions. This made it hard to step out of bounds. I stayed at the RCPZ. Every time a lion would get too old or too wounded, it would be taken into the wetlands, never to return. Only the senior handlers were allowed to go out back. The rest of us were limited to the shelter and cage. Since we weren't understaffed again, I usually just watched Danielle and the other seniors lead the lion out the back from afar. It happened surprisingly often, at least once every 2 months. There was an incident in October of 2018. Danielle was taking R04, or Roy, out to the wetlands. She was gone longer than anticipated. Then the entire facility was put on lockdown. Every single armed guard got automatic weapons from the armory, and handlers were instructed to put all the lions back in the indoor shelter. There was a siren blaring, the kind you manually hand crank. The guards made sure no one entered or left the facility, but they didn't have the manpower to see what we were doing. Most of the handlers stayed in the lunchroom, but I took the opportunity to look around. One of the veterinarians left their keys in their overcoat, making it easy for me to borrow them for a while. I started looking through the administrative area, folder after folder of papers regarding prehistoric Ice Age creatures, mostly lions and bears. There was also a schedule posted on one of the walls where it said which lion was to be taken into the feeding ground and at what time. October of every year was marked in red ink as if to show that it was a particularly important time. We weren't allowed cell phones on the premises, or I'd have shared all of it here with you. The one thing that stood out the most was the many mentions of Tapex. At first I thought it was some kind of brand, but it was mentioned in several papers as well. The Tapex was some kind of prehistoric Ice Age creature, the true apex. That Which Eats Lions, one paper was titled. We were locked in for the rest of the day. Danielle didn't come back, neither did Roy. Several guards mysteriously quit on the same day. It was a mess, and no one was telling us anything about it. Senior handler Lauren was promoted to supervisor, and there were a lot of changes. The veterinarians told us we had to triple the number of prides. 2 more enclosures were to be built, and the caged area had to be doubled in size. More lions were to be imported, and during construction, it was up to the handlers to make sure they could all live in close proximity. It was hell. Imagine 4 literal alpha creatures all competing, and you're supposed to be the referee to step up when things got too rough. We had to be on 24-hour surveillance, and some of the more aggressive creatures had to be sedated regularly. Even the calmer lions were agitated by the new arrivals. We were stressed to the brim, each and every one of us. It took us months to get things in order. We managed it, but it took a lot more effort than it should have. We were just pushed too far for weeks on end, and most of us were ready to quit. Then came a pay raise, increased vacation days, and finally, the pandemic. When the COVID pandemic struck, most of us realized it'd be near impossible to get another job working with animals like this. The amount of lions being put out to pasture nearly tripled. Instead of once every 2 months, it was once every 3 or 4 weeks. The veterinarians kept referencing a brood and an updated containment protocol, but we were kept in the dark about the details. They were getting careless, and the word Tapex was getting thrown around more openly. Then came February 2021. I usually went home around 6 p.m. when the night crew arrived, so I was getting ready to leave. We were grooming one of the lionesses and cleaning up the shelter when the alarm went off, 5:45. The armed guards panicked. They told us we needed to bring out 3 lions immediately. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. 3 perfectly healthy lions were to be brought out and killed. The entire handler staff had to go out, me included. The lions weren't cooperating, and we had to force them out with catch-all poles. I was scared out of my mind. These big cats growling and snarling, as we had to force them out through openings in the chain-link fence. Armed guards with itchy trigger fingers. I was keeping madness at bay with a literal stick. It was getting dark, but a few of us had brought flashlights. I was one of them. My hands cramped around the catch-all as this massive animal protested and pulled against 4 handlers, trying to hold it off. The only other lights we had were the flashlights attached to the automatic weapons of the armed escort. Something was moving in the wetlands. Something big. I barely got a glimpse of it, but I saw scales. More movement, smaller. The lions were freaking out. The lioness in the far front, held back by 5 grown and trained handlers, was jumping and rolling. It was desperately trying to get away, meowing, screaming in protest, almost snapping its own neck. The second lion, an adolescent male, was getting aggressive. The lioness we were escorting in the back just stopped, frozen in fear. She looked back at us, as if pleading for us to release her. The Tapex struck. The lioness in the front was swept along by a wave of scale and teeth, instantly sinking back into the swamp. The catch-all was dragged along, and one of the handlers who were too slow to let go was dragged into the swamp. Once he got loose, I heard nothing but a short yell before he was pulled beneath the surface. He didn't come back up. It was chaos. The handlers in front of us dropped the adolescent male, who took off down the path. After about 30 feet, it just disappeared with a pained yelp. The handlers were freaking out. The armed guards were screaming at us to keep moving, to keep quiet, and to turn off our flashlights. Erica, one of the handlers, just took off running back towards the shelter. I heard a series of gunshots. For 1 second, it was completely quiet. We were in the eye of the storm. One by one, people around me started disappearing. Some handlers took off running, some just dived into the grass. The guards were firing at something, but I couldn't see what. In a matter of seconds, I realized I was the only one left holding the catch-all for a fully grown lioness, staring me down. She could easily have torn loose and mauled me, but she was just as terrified as I was. At first, I thought I saw 3 logs wash up from the swamp. It took a few moments for me to realize that it was actually claws, reptilian. Something was dragging itself out of the swamp, moving big chunks of debris. It was covered in undergrowth. making it look like the wetlands themselves were moving around us. The night air was filled with wet mud. The birds had long since fled, leaving only me, the lioness, and the tapex. I couldn't see it clearly. It had an uneven amount of eyes, all moving in different directions, vibrating with excitement, larger than hubcaps, a mouth wide enough to swallow a car, teeth like a bison made for crushing. It reminded me of the Cheshire Cat, locked in a sinister smile. The lioness was slowly backing away, ready to strike. I'd long since dropped the catch-all and fell to my knees in surrender. There was no way to win against something like this. The tapex looked at me with every single eye, vaguely reflected in my abandoned flashlight. It didn't breathe. It was surprisingly quiet. Those big square teeth drew closer, only to effortlessly push me out of the way. Some sort of appendage extended from the creature's left side. I could hear several more appendages splash against the water surface. I heard the catch-all rattle closer as the lioness was pulled into the creature's maw. She put up a good fight, twisting and turning every inch of the way, but it was no use. Bones broke like twigs. Blood dripped from the space in between the bucket-sized teeth. A sudden quiet as the roars and growls of the lion stopped. I closed my eyes, barely noticing I'd long since pissed myself. I felt the teeth drawing closer. "Please," I cried. "Please!" To my surprise, it stopped. It was close enough for me to touch with the tip of my nose. The stank of mud and innards was immense, nearly making me gag. "We'll bring more," I stammered. "You'll get more." The tapex retreated without hesitation. It made a sound. It was not a grunt, a growl, or a roar. It was a calculated and trained sound made with great effort. More. It left. I cried. The survivors made their way back. It was done. They are intelligent. Long ago, we took away their natural habitat. We hunted their main prey to extinction. At some point, we must have fought them, only to realize that it'd be easier to keep them happy and well-fed. They could just eat us and multiply, but as long as we keep them fed and happy, they don't. Were we to stop, they would simply leave the enclosure and wreak havoc. In a way, they are not the captives. We are. This is an apex species just as intelligent, if not more, than we are. Those scratch-marked logs I mentioned earlier, yeah, those were scribbles. They have a written language. They live for thousands of years and only grow larger with age. We've tried to kill them, but they're immune to pretty much everything but high-yield explosives. Their intelligence allows them to coordinate and predict attacks. Remember those cutbacks I mentioned back in the 80s? Yeah, that was after an attempt to kill one of them. We lost a dozen people and they tore through 2 buildings, devouring every single lion we had. The repairs cost so much that the new management decided to completely abandon the idea. I've since been promoted to supervisor, surpassing the senior handler title completely. I have to go out with every feeding now. The tapex might get upset otherwise. They even know my name. There are 3 of them in total, 1 adolescent and 2 younger. I encountered the youngest that night. I want to reach out to those who work at the other zones. If the tapex feeds on lions, what feeds on tigers? Elephants? There is little to no contact between these zones, and the top brass are on a very strict need-to-know basis. I'm pretty sure they'd kill me if I tried going to the press, but posting anonymously online doesn't seem to bother them. Who's gonna believe some nobody on Reddit after all?